Hello everyone, Captain Sensible here, back by popular demand. Mr. Smelly asked me to do a guest review just to kick off this video, so I'm going to be talking about Very Valentino by Versace. This one's from 1964, I think. The perfumier is Bobby Davro. The notes on this one are nutmeg, sandalwood, lavender and donuts. I wore this one out for a meal with my wife the other night. The projection was quite good. A couple on the table opposite us got up and left before their meal arrived, so I was definitely making my presence felt. I quite liked it. I would probably, if I had to give it a mark out of 10, I would give it a 7.5 out of 10, but I don't have to, so I won't. Unfortunately, the meal didn't go that well. My wife was just nagging me a little bit again, and she said to me, darling, I want you to stop masturbating over other women. I said, I can understand why you find that upsetting, darling, but let's face it, you know, all men do it. She said, yes, but not in a restaurant. Please stop now.
Mr. Smelly. Mr. Smelly. Mr. Smelly. Mr. Smelly.
Hello everyone, welcome back. So today we're going to be having a look at my top 10 fragrances from the 2000s. So just to clarify, that means fragrances made between 2000 and 2009 inclusive, so that's a decade. And we're now into a new decade, aren't we, since 2010, the 2010. So these are designer fragrances. Let's get into it and see which my personal favourites are. I will pay some respect to the ones that were most influential and have received the widest public acclaim, but I'm not going to choose the most obvious ones in all cases. So in some cases, they're real wild cards that you may never have heard of, and there's some that you'll expect. So let me know what you think of my list. There may be a few omissions that you think are shocking. How could you leave that one out or that one out? And you may say some of the ones I've included are a little bit odd, but they're my personal picks. They're not going to be in chronological order. I'm going to do them building up to my favourite one at the top of the list, but there's not much in it. They're all really good in my opinion. Okay, first of all then, at number 10, this will be a surprise. It's PACO Rabanne XS Extreme. Now, I did a video doing Forgotten Flankers and mentioned this one, and XS from PACO Rabanne came out back in the 90s. I think it was 1993. By 2000, we had this flanker to it. It's still an eau de toilette, same concentration as the original. And strangely, I think it's actually more fresh and zesty than the original fragrance. It's a brilliant, fresh, citrus, manly, woody, somewhat spicy fragrance. Some of the notes in this one include petitgrain, mint, there's bergamot, watermelon and rose. There's rosewood and leather and oak moss. It's really, really intriguing, lovely and fresh and manly, very hard to find these days, and it smells an awful lot like Creed's Himalaya, which I do have a few mils of as well. I know the original XS was compared to Himalaya, which came along after that and after this. This one I think smells even closer to Himalaya, both in the high quality of the scent and the way that the scent is constructed. Really, really beautiful stuff. XS Extreme, if you can find it, well worth checking out. That was 2000, that one came out right at the beginning of the new millennium. Next up then, at number 9, I'm putting Yves Saint Laurent La Nuit de l'Homme. So this came out in 2009. We know it's been reformulated. Current versions are a bit weaker, just a touch less rich than the older version. So if you can get a pre-2012 or 2012 and before version, they're a little bit better. It is a really charming scent. It's not one of my massive favourites. Jeremy Fragrance says, or used to say, it was his absolute favourite. I wouldn't go that far myself, but it is very, very pleasant. Key notes in this one, the key players here are cardamom and lavender combining for a very nice, slightly sweet, slightly spicy, very enticing nighttime or possibly daytime appropriate scent. One that ladies do always really enjoy, and it is somewhat different to anything that had come before. So it's a very charming, interesting, unique scent. Or at least it was at the time, and it paved the way for many other scents that have come since. So I do think La Nuit de l'Homme, certainly if you're a collector, belongs in your collection, and I do still enjoy it, even in the modern version. This is a 2012. I had a more modern one. It didn't project or last massively, but it wasn't as horrendous as some people say, so it is worthy of a place as one of the top 10 designers of the 2000s. Moving on then. Next up, we've got a tie. This is between one that was my signature scent for 10 years and another one that came along from the same company. It's Chanel, of course. 2004 brought us Allure Homme Sport. Perhaps the perfection of the aquatic citrus sport fragrance was achieved here in this 2004 fragrance. So got lovely kind of mandarin orange notes in this one. There's a little bit of tonka bean in the base and some aldehydes, giving it a little bit of kind of a fizzy feel. Very much a marine aquatic fragrance, but with some charm, a little bit of sweetness and a very appealing character. I wore it for 10 years from 2004 onwards, and I got plenty of compliments throughout those years with this one. It really is a great crowd pleaser and sort of fallen off the radar a bit for fragrance reviewers on YouTube, but well worth checking out. And yeah, it was the perfection of the somewhat underwhelming genre, but still a nice genre, the sports fragrance. 2008 brought us another flanker to Chanel Allure, and this was Edition Blanche. And again, it's got a lot of nice citrus notes, and people compare this one to a lemon meringue cream pie. It's a little bit like Allure Homme Sport, but this one is less aquatic, doesn't really have that aquatic marine super sporty element. A little bit more spicy and peppery and a little bit more creamy. The Allure Homme Sport has creaminess, this one has more creaminess. Also really, really good, a really good all-rounder. I got fed up of Allure Homme Sport having worn it for 10 years, so when I'm in that mood, not quite the same, but slightly similar. Lovely Edition Blanche from Chanel 2008, coming in at number 8 in my list. At number 7 then, time to surprise you, I'm picking Jean Paul Gaultier's Fleur de Mal La Cologne. Jean Paul Gaultier Le Mal came out in the mid-90s, classic fragrance. Then we had Fleur de Mal. Then in 2008 they brought out Fleur de Mal La Cologne. This is a fresh, floral, very borderline unisex kind of fragrance. You've got some jasmine, I think, in there. There's neroli, caraway and basil. It's a very soft, soapy kind of mixture of a almost vanilla sweetness with a neroli freshness. And if that appeals to you, this is very strong smelling, very fresh, but not in an obvious citrus way. I find it really compelling and a really, really unique fragrance actually from the master, Francis Kurkdjian, the man behind the original Le Mal. So I think that deserves a place. A really, really enticing, intriguing and unique scent, I think. So for me, but I prefer it to the original Fleur de Mal. It's coming in at number 7 on my list, Fleur de Mal La Cologne. Next up, I'm going to surprise you again. It's Habit Rouge Sport from 2009. The original Habit Rouge from Guerlain came out way back in 1966. This flanker to it is really, really charming and unique for a sports fragrance. There's bamboo in the notes. It's got rose. There's jasmine and patchouli in there as well. It's woody. It's got a certain sort of floral, almost sweetness, and a really nice freshness, but it's not an obvious typical citrus freshness again, and it's just really, really versatile. You can wear it any time of year. Performance is very good. Lovely for me combination of rose with some sort of citrus freshness and a beautiful woodiness. I find it just doesn't smell like anything else I've ever smelled, hardly ever gets talked about, sadly discontinued, but you might be able to still find this one. Habit Rouge Sport from 2009, one of my top 10 in my collection that were released in the 2000s. Next up then, it's one from a really big player in the designer fragrance scene, that's of course Yves Saint Laurent, and this one is Body KOUROS, released right at the cusp of the decade in the year 2000. Annick Menardo, the perfumier for this one, the person behind Bulgari's Black and Hugo Boss Bottled, a couple of real classics. This one, no exception, or no different to those, another classic I think. It's completely different to KOUROS from 1981, the original fragrance. This one centres perhaps around a certain sweetness, an incense note combined with eucalyptus, so an almost medicinal note there with the eucalyptus, giving it a really different quality, but it's combined so skillfully with a nice kind of benzoin sweetness in the base and this slightly mysterious oriental incense note. Makes it a really, really interesting fragrance. Perhaps people just didn't really know what to do with this one as a flanker of a completely different fragrance. Very unusual bottle there. Mine's a slightly, or it is a vintage version. It had different packaging after a while. I really enjoy wearing this one and smelling it. I am still getting to know this one. I've had it a few months and it's really complex and a brilliant piece of perfumery, I think, there from the year 2000. Body KOUROS from Yves Saint Laurent. Now it just so happens that the next one on my list is also from Yves Saint Laurent. This is 2003 the year, and the fragrance Rive Gauche Pour Homme, perhaps the ultimate barbershop scent, definitely the ultimate designer barbershop scent. It's Azzaro Pour Homme refined and perfected, you might say. That was a 1978 release, this one, 2003. Very, very smooth, shaving foam type smell. There's this kind of licoricey anise note in there, a lot of lavender, and a really nice kind of masculine oak moss element with this one. So it's fresh, not through being citrusy, but through having a manly, soapy, shaving foam kind of vibe, but really high quality, beautiful, excellence shaving foam, or maybe soap or something like that. That fresh out of the shower, slightly retro, but feel, but cleaned up for the 2000s. Tom Ford was the artistic director at Yves Saint Laurent when they made this, and it's a really brilliant fragrance. I haven't included M7 from Yves Saint Laurent because I don't quite get that one. It was one of the first oud fragrances from a designer house. I like it, but not enough to have bought a bottle, so I'm going to go with Rive Gauche from 2003. Don't panic, because you can't get this bottle easily. The reissued La Collection version, either in this bottle or a clear version, smells fine and exactly the same. As far as I can tell, I'm happy to use either. Okay, so now we're at number 3. This is the only one that I don't have, but it had to be in here. 2006 saw the release from Jean-Claude Ellena, the perfumier, the house Hermes, and it was, of course, Terre. So Terre d'Hermes, here's my little sample here. A tangy orange note mixed with a lovely earthy vetiver. So it's got almost a dirty orange rolled in the earth feel, and that smells a lot better than it perhaps sounds. I have a copy of it basically called by Yardley called Citrus Wood, and that's why I have never got round to buying a bottle of Terre de Hermes, but this one smells very, very similar. Yardley Citrus Wood is cheaper, but of course the real masterpiece, Terre de Hermes 2006. Very, very unique at the time, and a classic fragrance that any man of any age can wear today in almost any situation. It is a really, really skillful, brilliantly unique at the time fragrance, Terre d'Hermes. A lot of ISOE Super, I think, also went into that one. That's a note that smooths things out, a woody, artificial note in a lot of fragrances. That doesn't sound like a good thing, but it usually smells good when you have ISOE Super in a fragrance. Next up, we're already nearly at the end. It's number 2. What's going to be number 2? Wait for it. You'll know if you know my channel, I'm a real fan of this one. BOGART Pour Homme from 2004. One of those ones that, depending where you are in the world, you don't see on the shelves. It's not alongside your Chanels and your Diors very often in my part of the world, in England here. But BOGART Pour Homme should be right up there with any designer fragrance. It came out in 2004. The standard description of the smell of this one is a cherried tobacco smell. That could be a note. It's a kind of barbershop. There's lavender, there's a certain sweetness, maybe cherry, tobacco. Yeah, there is a tobacco smell in there. It's not listed in the notes. Some people also say it's Mugler's Pure Havane combined with Jean Paul Gaultier Le Male. So it's a sort of sweet barbershop. Tremendous performance. Lovely tonka bean element in there. Smells maybe a bit synthetic. Not everyone likes it. It's a bit hit or miss. I really like it. Really powerful performance. Really slightly unique. Nothing else smells quite like this one. Some people also compare it a little bit to Naxos by Xerjoff, another really, that one's an expensive niche combination of tobacco with cinnamon and sweet notes. Beautiful stuff. Worth the blind buy if you don't mind a slight risk, because it's £15 and stuff. You can get 100 mils in the UK. Brilliant, brilliant fragrance. Number 2 for me from designer fragrances in that decade. It's my personal opinion, so feel free to criticise. Number 1 then, what was the best designer release of the 2000s? Well, I've kind of tied it here because I only have a sample of the originator. So in 2005 we saw the release of DIOR Homme. 2007 we had the flanker DIOR Homme Intense, which I do own. So I'm kind of tying them, but I guess we probably should give it to the originator, but this flanker was a richer version. The notes in DIOR Homme, main thing is iris, giving this kind of lipstick smell, which sounds like it should be effeminate, but really worked. Guys loved it, and it smells great on a man. Combined with some bergamot and vetiver notes. Olivier Polge was the perfumier, and he did a fantastic job. So unique, so revolutionary at the time. And then they in 2007 released a slightly thicker eau de parfum version of the original eau de toilette, maybe a little bit more of a kind of cacao, chocolatey note that did appear to some extent in the original too, and maybe just a bit warmer and darker and richer, more nighttime appropriate, whereas the DIOR Homme could be a signature scent for work or any time. Brilliant, brilliant fragrance, unique, fantastic perfumery. It was reformulated by Francois de Machy, both versions, the Intense and the original. Slightly different, but both really, really good reformulations, so you can buy today's version on the shelves and you know it's going to be absolutely excellent. So DIOR Homme, I'm tying it with DIOR Homme Intense because I prefer the Intense because it's stronger. We're going to tie those at number 1. It was the most revolutionary smelling designer fragrance of that decade, and it influenced many things that have come since. Valentino Uomo and its flankers, Prada L'Homme that we had a year or two ago, and the Intense flanker. Lots of people have copied that idea. The originator was DIOR Homme. For me, the greatest fragrance of the 2000s, but all the ones in this list were brilliant. I really enjoy smelling them all, and it was quite a good decade overall when you look at it. People bemoan the modern lack of unique fragrances like we had in the 80s and so on. But we have more releases now, so of course a large percentage of them might not be exciting, but we can see, looking back on a decade like the 2000s and even today since 2010, there's been quite a few really brilliant ones in amongst some average stuff. Lovely fragrances. Please check them out and let me know what you thought of my choices. No 1 million. At the time people raved about it, I personally don't find it that appealing. Too sweet, too bubblegummy for me. There's other things I've left out. Let me know if your ire has been aroused by those omissions. Remember, whatever we're doing in life, let's project. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.